I want to begin with something called a value concept. It comes from Max Kadushin's book, The Rabbinic Mind, and I've slowly been reading it throughout the high holiday season. Max Kadushin was ordained from JTS in 1920, worked with Kaplan on developing Reconstructionist Judaism and its ideas, and ultimately worked as a congregational rabbi. His work is foundational to understanding conservative Judaism. He explains that Rabbinic Judaism is not built on a logical system of ideas constructed into a hierarchy, but instead as an organism of ideas, a network of concepts that are constantly interacting with one another. They retain some of the unique quality that makes them what they are, a shared understanding of their meaning, but always refracted by how it is used at the moment. He says, quote, "This compound term, value concepts, has the great advantage of pointing, through its two components, to two important things. The component, concepts, tells us that the values referred to are communicable ideas, that is, ideas that may be shared by the group as a whole, whilst the component, value, tells us that the ideas are nevertheless also, in a degree, personal and subjective, and that they are ideas held warmly. Kadushin instructs us to look at our texts and draw out the value concepts as a way of understanding the ideas and their interactions. So let's dig into Sukkot in specific and try and draw out some wisdom. In Leviticus chapter 23, verses 42 and 43, it reads, "Basukkot teshvu shivat yamim kol ha'ezrach be'Yisrael yeshvu b'Sukkot. Laman yedu dorotechem ki b'Sukkot hoshavti et b'nei Yisrael v'hotzi'i otam me'eretz Mitzrayim ani Hashem Elohechem. You shall live in booths 7 days. All citizens in Israel shall live in booths, in order that future generations may know that I made the Israelite people live in booths when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God." The value concepts that call out to me, they are yeshiva, dwelling, b'nei Yisrael, Israel as a people, yidiyat dorotechem, the knowledge of future generations, and yitziat Mitzrayim, the exodus from Egypt. We primarily focus on the first one, yeshiva, dwelling, but each is essential to our understanding of this holiday and what it means to us. Yeshiva, dwelling. As it's written in the verse, teshvu, you shall dwell, this instructs us to build Sukkot and make them our homes. We decorate them, we eat in them, and presumably sleep in them. On the very first page of Masechet Sukkah, the tractate dealing with Sukkot in the Talmud, Rava teaches, from the following verse, you shall dwell in Sukkot for 7 days, which is our verse, the Torah declared, for 7 days leave your permanent dwelling place and dwell in a temporary dwelling place. Dirat arai, a temporary dwelling place. This is how we usually understand the nature of our Sukkot. This flipped, upside-down nature of Sukkot is there to teach us about the fragility of life and our gratitude for our bounty. We too are out in the fields gazing upon our crops each year. We too are the Israelites in the desert, sheltered by God's glory. This temporary quality is also larger than just Sukkot. It is a reminder of our temporary nature. Our lives, in the scheme of the universe, are merely a spark of existence. We're here on earth for just a brief moment. So then we're led to ask, who am I? What do I do with this moment that I have? B'nei Yisrael, the people of Israel. This is connected here with the concept of kol ha'ezrach be'Yisrael, all citizens in Israel. We are a people who take on the responsibilities of those around us. Just like with Shabbat, it is not just Jews who are free from labor, but everyone we are responsible for, including animals, cannot be put to work. Here, the instruction is that we must see others as we see ourselves, deserving of dignity, of justice, and of compassion. Kol Israel Arevim Ze Lazeh. All of Israel is responsible for one another. Dr. Reuven Firestone explains that Arevim is about Arev, being a guarantor for a loan. We are each the backstop for one another. If everything goes wrong, we are there for each other. Yidiyat dorotechem. This is the knowledge of future generations, and it should sound familiar as it is so interconnected with Yitziat Mitzrayim, the exodus from Egypt. Our core Passover celebrations are bound up in these two ideas. So what is it doing here? Now, I want you to remember that value concepts are impacted by the contexts in which they are applied. So first, we can understand it from the perspective of the narrative. The Israelites are in the desert, trying to survive the elements and bad actors along the way after leaving Egypt. This is the most temporary part of the journey, the in-between Egypt and the Promised Land. However, their temporary journey lasts them 40 years, and no one really born in Egypt survives the trip. But more than that, we have to remember where we came from, what guides us. Yedu, as it is written in the text, is more literally translated as they shall know. This is a statement of comprehension, that our task on earth is to leave a legacy, to teach our children, to have made a difference to what comes after us. Together, this constellation of value concepts, shifting and molding, interacting, leads me to see that our task as Jews, dwelling in our Sukkot, is to be responsible for the other, for our children, to the story that weaves through us. Rabbi Rachel Barenblatt, known as the Velveteen Rabbi, wrote last year about Sukkot, quote, Sukkot says, keep your heart open a little longer. Sukkot is the opportunity to keep our hearts open wide. We build and decorate these fragile little houses. Their roofs have to be made out of plants that are harvested from the earth and open enough to let in the stars and the rain. A sukkah is almost a sketch of a house, a parody of a house, a hint of a house. You can see the outlines of a house, but it's flimsy and the roof leaks, and as soon as it's built, it starts succumbing to the rain and the wind and the weather. Our bodies are like Sukkot. Our lives are like Sukkot. The whole planet is like a sukkah. It's heartbreaking when we let ourselves stop and feel it. But here's the thing. When we let ourselves stop and feel it, that's when we let God in. This is the key to our responsibility to others, to have an open heart, to empathize and to understand, to listen and to feel. Right now, we are broken. Our society, our country, we're broken. We stopped opening our hearts. We stopped listening. We have stopped trying to understand one another. We have forgotten our responsibility. This upcoming Shabbat, we will read from the book of Kohelet, chapter 5, verses 7. It says, if you see in a province oppression of the poor and suppression of the right and justice, don't wonder at the fact. For one high official is protected by a higher one, both of them by still higher ones. Corruption, oppression, suppression of justice. This is what we've sown, and this is what we're reaping. Rashi explains regarding this verse, if you see that they oppress the poor and deprive them of justice, and you see charity coming to the city, that is to say, the Holy One, blessed be God, is lavishing goodness upon them and does not mete out retribution upon them, do not wonder about the will of the Omnipresent, for so is God's custom, to be slow to anger. In other words, when those who do injustice seem to be successful, know that this is because God is slow to anger. This is a quality we like in God. When that anger is directed at us, when we have transgressed, when we have sinned, we just spent the last few weeks grateful that God was slow to anger. So how do we deal with this seeming contradiction? God is inviting us to act. God is encouraging us to seek justice, to not wonder at the fact, but to seize the opportunity to make the world a better place, to make kindness, understanding, equity, and justice constant in our lives. I was reflecting on the news with my friend Josiah Gilliam this week, and we talked about the presidential debates, the grand jury results of Breonna Taylor, the frustrations we were feeling, the overwhelming pressure pushing down on our shared optimism. Having grown up at his father's church, we often share teachings between us, verses and stories that speak to us, that are meaningful to us. I was telling him about the Midrash, about the Lulav and the Etrog, how they represent the different parts of the community. And then when we grasp them all together, like we did this morning, like we do every day of Sukkot, we are manifesting this idea of unity, the value concept of Achdut, if you will. In response, he shared this verse from Isaiah 56:1. Thus said the Lord, observe what is right and do what is just, for soon my salvation will come, and my deliverance be revealed. Happy is the one who does this, the one who holds fast to it, who keeps the Sabbath and does not profane it, and stays their hand from doing any evil. And this is how Josiah explained it. Justice requires maintenance, not just moral leanings. The verse is using active language. This is mirrored in the idea of holding it fast, because you can get away without diligence. Holding fast, yachzik, is the same word we use for Torah. It is a tree of life to those who hold fast to it. Machazikim ba. If we wish our community, our country, and our society to be healthy, to be just and equitable, we must hold on fast. We must grasp it like the lulav and the etrog, making unity core to our ambitions. We must reflect on our temporariness as we dwell in our Sukkot. We must stay responsible to one another as we teach our children. Modim Simcha, Chag Sameach, and I hope you have a wonderful Sukkot.